Have you ever found yourself scrolling through your phone, only to stumble upon a comment that instantly tightens your chest and sends your heart racing? Or maybe you've been in a conversation where one careless remark completely derailed your mood for the rest of the day. In a world that constantly pushes our emotional buttons through notifications, headlines, and personal interactions, it's easy to feel like we're at the mercy of whatever happens around us. We react often without thinking and later wonder why we said what we said or felt what we felt. That immediate, often overwhelming, surge of emotion isn't just exhausting. It can strain relationships, cloud judgment, and pull us further away from the calm and clarity we truly crave. But what if there was another way? What if you could build a kind of emotional immunity, an inner strength that allows you to meet life's challenges without being thrown off balance? This isn't about suppressing how you feel or pretending things don't bother you. It's about something far more profound, the ancient Stoic art of non-reactivity. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most respected Stoic philosophers, put it perfectly when he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. That power lies in what I like to call the invisible code of non-reactivity, a set of mental and emotional practices that allow you to respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. In this video, we're going to explore exactly how Stoicism helps us build this resilience. We'll uncover practical wisdom that has stood the test of time, ideas that teach us how to pause, reflect, and choose our actions rather than letting our emotions choose for us. This isn't abstract philosophy, it's a toolkit for everyday life. Whether you're dealing with stress at work, tension in relationships, or just the general noise of modern living, these principles can help you cultivate a sense of inner tranquility that nothing outside of you can easily shake. So if you've ever wished you could handle difficult moments with more grace and less regret, you're in the right place. Let's begin this journey into the heart of Stoic practice and discover how to turn emotional reactivity into lasting emotional strength. How often do you find yourself stressed or anxious over something that is completely outside of your influence? Maybe it's a delayed flight, a negative comment from a stranger online, or even the mood of your boss first thing in the morning. We pour so much mental and emotional energy into these external events, trying to control the uncontrollable, and in the process, we drain our own peace of mind. This is exactly where Stoic philosophy begins its work, with a simple yet life-changing idea known as the Dichotomy of Control. It's the bedrock principle of non-reactivity, introduced by the philosopher Epictetus, who taught that the path to tranquility starts with recognizing what is truly ours to command and what is not. Epictetus, a former slave who became one of the most influential Stoic teachers, laid this out clearly in his handbook, the Enchiridion. He wrote, "Some things are within our power while others are not." Within our power are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever is of our own doing. Not within our power are our body, our property, our reputation, our status, and, in a word, whatever is not of our own doing. In modern terms, he's drawing a clear line between our internal world, our thoughts, judgments, and choices, and the external world of events, other people's actions and circumstances. The emotional turmoil we experience so often comes from blurring that line, from trying to manage things that were never ours to manage in the first place. Think about the weather. You might be stressed because an outdoor event you planned could be ruined by rain. You can refresh the forecast 100 times, you can worry and complain, but you cannot control whether it rains. That is entirely outside your influence. What is within your power, however, is your preparation, bringing a canopy, having a backup plan indoors, or even just adjusting your own attitude about what makes a gathering meaningful. The Stoic shift happens right there, moving your focus and energy from the uncontrollable event to your controllable response. This isn't about passive acceptance, it's about intelligent engagement with reality. By investing your effort only where it can actually make a difference, you stop wasting emotional energy and start building genuine resilience. So here's a challenge for you. Bring to mind a current challenge you're facing. It could be something at work, in a relationship, or a personal goal. Now, take a moment to mentally list 2 things. First, identify one aspect of this situation that you truly cannot control. Then, identify one thing within that same challenge that you can control, perhaps your effort, your attitude, or how you choose to interpret the event. Just this act of separation is a powerful first step in practicing the dichotomy of control. It's the foundation upon which emotional immunity is built, training your mind to respond from a place of power rather than react from a place of panic. Picture your mind as a vast, open sky, and every thought that enters it as a passing cloud. Some are light and fluffy, others dark and stormy, but none are permanent fixtures. They drift into view, linger for a moment, and then continue on their way. This is the essence of cognitive distancing, a profound Stoic practice that teaches us to observe our thoughts without immediately latching onto them. It's about creating a crucial pause between receiving an initial impression and launching into a full-blown emotional reaction. By stepping back, we grant ourselves the mental space to choose a response rather than being hijacked by a fleeting feeling. Marcus Aurelius, in his private journal known as Meditations, offered a simple but powerful directive for this practice. He wrote, "Remember, matter. How tiny your share of it, time, how brief and fleeting your allotment, fate, how small a role you play in it." And elsewhere, he advises to examine the matter from every angle. He wasn't suggesting we become cold or detached from life. Instead, he was urging us to become mindful observers of our own inner world, to scrutinize the raw data of our experiences before we assign meaning and emotion to them. A thought is just a thought until we give it our assent, until we decide to believe it and let it steer our actions. Cognitive distancing is the tool that allows us to make that choice consciously. Consider a modern scenario we've all likely faced. You send a text message to a friend or colleague, and you see those 3 little dots appear, indicating they are typing a reply. Then suddenly the dots vanish and no message comes through. The initial impression, the first thought that flashes into your mind, might be something like, "They're ignoring me," or "I must have said something wrong." Without cognitive distancing, that thought instantly becomes a fact in your mind. It triggers a wave of anxiety, insecurity, or even anger. You might react by sending a follow-up message filled with worry or accusation, potentially creating a conflict where none existed. Now apply the Stoic pause. That first thought, "They're ignoring me," is just a cloud in the sky. You notice it, you acknowledge its presence, but you don't fuse with it. You create distance. From this slightly removed perspective, you can examine the impression from other angles. Perhaps their phone died. Maybe they were interrupted by an urgent task. It's possible they simply needed a moment to think of a proper response. By not immediately accepting the first, most negative interpretation, you avoid an impulsive reaction. You allow for rationality and patience to guide you, saving yourself and potentially the other person from unnecessary emotional turbulence. Take a moment to reflect on your own life. Can you recall a recent situation where a sudden, strong thought led you to a reaction you later regretted? Perhaps it was a sharp comment made in a moment of frustration or a decision fueled by anxiety. Now reimagine that moment with the practice of cognitive distancing. What if you had been able to see that initial thought as merely one possible interpretation among many? How might you have responded differently? This simple act of reflection begins to rewire your approach, training you to meet impressions not as unquestionable truths, but as suggestions to be considered. It is in this space between the event and your response that true emotional freedom is found. What if you could choose not to believe every single thought that pops into your head, especially the ones that immediately upset you? Imagine the freedom of receiving a critical comment or facing a setback and feeling that initial sting, but then having the ability to stop, to question that initial interpretation, and to decide for yourself whether it's actually true or worth your emotional energy. This is not some far-fetched superpower. This is the core of the Stoic discipline of Assent. It's the advanced practice of guarding what Marcus Aurelius called your inner citadel, the central fortress of your mind, by consciously withholding your agreement from those automatic, reactive thoughts that so often lead to distress. The ancient teacher Epictetus gave us the foundational principle for this practice. He said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them." Let that sink in for a moment. The event itself is neutral. It's our judgment about the event, our instant and often unconscious assent to a particular negative interpretation, that creates the emotional storm. The discipline of assent is the trained ability to intercept that judgment before it becomes a full-blown belief. It's the mental muscle that allows you to see a thought, hold it in your hand for examination, and then choose whether to give it your endorsement or to simply let it go. This is how we build real emotional immunity, not by avoiding life's events, but by refusing to internalize every external event as a personal attack or a catastrophe. Consider a common modern scenario. You work hard on a project and present it to your team. Afterwards, your manager pulls you aside and says, "I have some feedback on your presentation style. I felt the middle section could have been more data-driven." Now, the initial raw impression is simply the sound of those words, but instantly, almost without you noticing, your mind offers up a judgment. "She's criticizing me. She thinks I'm incompetent. I'm going to be overlooked for the next promotion." Without the discipline of assent, you immediately agree with that judgment. You internalize it. You feel deflated, defensive, and perhaps even resentful. You might carry that frustration home, your entire evening ruined by a story you've written and fully believed in a matter of seconds. Now replay that scene with the discipline of assent at work. You hear the same feedback. You feel that same initial pang of defensiveness that's natural. But then you pause. You recognize the judgment your mind is offering you. This is a personal criticism, and instead of automatically agreeing, you examine it. You ask yourself, is this feedback actually about my entire worth as a person, or is it a specific, actionable comment on one presentation? Could this be an opportunity to improve rather than an indictment of my skills? By withholding your immediate assent, you create a space for a more rational, measured response. You might thank your manager for the feedback and ask for specifics on how to incorporate more data next time. You leave the interaction feeling empowered and focused on growth rather than defeated and emotional. You guarded your citadel, so let's bring this home. Think about a common assumption you might make, a story you tend to tell yourself that often leads to a reactive state. Maybe it's, "If I'm not busy, I'm not important," or "My value is determined by what others think of me," or "Things should always go according to my plan." For the next day, make it your practice to catch yourself in the act of assenting to that assumption. When you feel that familiar frustration or anxiety rising, pause and ask, did I just agree to a thought without examining it? Is this belief necessarily true? This simple act of questioning is the very training that strengthens your inner citadel brick by brick. Stoics didn't expect life to be easy, they prepared for hardship. While many of us subconsciously hope for smooth sailing, secretly believing that things should work out in our favor, the Stoics took a radically different approach. They actively trained their minds to not only accept but to deliberately visualize potential difficulties, setbacks, and losses. This intentional practice is known as Premeditatio Malorum, which translates to the premeditation of evils. But it's crucial to understand this isn't about pessimistic worrying or inviting negative energy. It's the complete opposite. It's a strategic exercise in emotional inoculation. By mentally rehearsing adversity in advance, we dramatically reduce the element of surprise, that jolt of panic and disorientation that so often triggers our most reactive and unhelpful responses. We trade shock for calm readiness. Seneca, the great Roman Stoic philosopher and statesman, was a powerful advocate for this technique. In one of his letters to his friend Lucilius, he wrote, "He robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand." Think about the profound wisdom in that single sentence. When you see a challenge approaching, even just in your mind's eye, you strip it of its ability to ambush you emotionally. The event itself may still happen, but its capacity to hijack your nervous system and plunge you into panic is significantly weakened. Seneca even suggested we should periodically tell ourselves, "Fortune may take from me only what she herself has given." This isn't a statement of fear, it's a declaration of inner fortitude. It's the mental equivalent of looking at everything you have, your job, your relationships, your health, your comfort, and quietly acknowledging none of this is guaranteed. It's all on loan. This perspective doesn't make you value these things less. It makes you appreciate them more deeply while simultaneously freeing you from the terror of losing them. A perfect modern analogy is a fire drill. No one conducts a fire drill because they expect the building to burn down. They do it so that if the unthinkable happens, nobody is ruled by blind panic. The alarm sounds, and instead of chaos, there's a calm, orderly procession out of the building. People know the exits, they know the procedure, they've walked through the steps mentally and physically. The actual emergency, should it occur, is met with trained response, not primal fear. Premeditatio Malorum is a fire drill for the mind. It's running through the scenarios that make us most anxious. What if I lose my job? What if this important conversation goes badly? What if I get sick? Not to dwell on the negative, but to develop a plan of action for your character. You're asking yourself, if this happened, what would my Stoic response be? How could I act with courage, wisdom, and justice even here? When you've already visited that difficult place in your thoughts, its terrain is familiar. You are no longer a terrified tourist, you become a calm, prepared guide for your own emotions. So let's put this into practice right now. Bring to mind a specific future stressor you're anticipating. It could be a difficult conversation you need to have, a presentation at work, or even a potentially worrisome doctor's appointment. Now, instead of trying to push the anxiety away, lean into it for a moment with purpose. Close your eyes and mentally rehearse the scenario. Visualize it unfolding in the most challenging way possible. But here's the key: as you watch this mental movie, focus intently on your response. See yourself breathing deeply, maintaining your composure, listening carefully, and choosing your words with deliberate calm. Rehearse not the disaster, but your own virtuous and resilient reaction to it. By doing this, you are not inviting trouble. You are building an inner infrastructure of calm that will serve you no matter what the future holds. What if every obstacle you faced could be transformed into a stepping stone? What if the very things that seem to block your path could actually become the foundation for your growth? This is the heart of the next Stoic practice, a profound shift in perspective known as amor fati, a Latin phrase that translates to a love of one's fate. It's the conscious decision to not just grudgingly accept what happens, but to embrace it, to welcome it, and to find a way to love it. This isn't about passive resignation or pretending that difficult things aren't difficult. It's about an active, dynamic acceptance that completely dissolves our instinctive resistance to life's inevitable twists and turns. When we stop fighting reality, we stop the internal emotional struggle that is so often the true source of our suffering. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, writing in his private meditations, continually circled back to this idea of harmonious acceptance. He advised himself to accept whatever comes to you, woven in the pattern of your destiny, for what could more fittingly be your lot. He saw the universe as a single, living, rational entity, and every event within it, good, bad, or indifferent, as a necessary thread in a vast, interconnected tapestry. To resist any single thread is to reject the entire pattern, creating a friction that tears you apart from the inside. Even the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, though not a Stoic, captured the spirit of this practice perfectly when he wrote, "Amor fati, let that be my love henceforth. I want to wage no war against what is ugly. I do not want to accuse. I do not even want to accuse those who accuse. Looking away shall be my only negation. And all in all and on the whole, some day I wish to be only a yes-sayer. This is the ultimate goal, to become a person who says yes to life in its entirety." Consider a story of an unexpected setback. Imagine a talented musician who has dedicated years to mastering a specific instrument, dreaming of a professional career in an orchestra. One day, they develop a chronic condition in their hands that makes prolonged practice painful and ultimately impossible. The initial reaction is one of devastating grief, anger, and a sense of utter injustice. This is the raw human response. The reactive path would be to dwell in that anger, to see themselves as a victim of cruel fate, and to perhaps give up entirely. But the path of amor fati would begin with a different question. After acknowledging the pain, they might ask, if this is my reality, how can I use it? How can I love this turn of events? This shift in perspective could lead them to discover a latent talent for composing music, a skill that doesn't require the same physical demand, but allows their musical genius to flourish in a new way. They might find a deeper fulfillment in teaching and inspiring other young musicians, passing on their knowledge. The obstacle didn't change, but their relationship to it did. By embracing the fate of their injury, they didn't just find a new career, they found a new, and perhaps even more meaningful, expression of their passion. Now bring this concept into your own life. I want you to think of one recent difficulty, a minor annoyance or a larger frustration you've encountered this week. It could be something as simple as getting stuck in traffic and missing an appointment, or something more significant like a project at work not turning out as planned. Instead of just shrugging it off or continuing to quietly resent it, I challenge you to actively reframe it. Ask yourself, what hidden opportunity might be buried within this event? Did that traffic jam force a moment of unexpected quiet and reflection in your otherwise hectic day? Did that failed project teach you a crucial lesson that will prevent a much larger failure down the road? How can you not just accept this event, but find a way to be grateful for it? This practice of actively loving your fate is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes, until eventually you meet life's surprises not with dread, but with a curious and resilient heart. Now imagine for a moment that you could float high above the earth, rising until the entire planet comes into view. You see continents and oceans, vast swirling weather systems, the silent arc of day turning into night across the globe. From this incredible vantage point, can you even spot your own city, let alone your own home? And within that tiny, invisible speck, how significant does that argument you had yesterday, or that looming work deadline, or that criticism you received truly appear? This mental exercise, known to the Stoics as the view from above, is one of the most powerful tools for instantly dismantling the emotional weight we place on our daily troubles. It's not about dismissing your very real human concerns, but about placing them within the proper context of a vast, ancient, and awe-inspiring cosmos. By consciously zooming out, we shrink our problems down to their actual size, robbing them of their perceived power to overwhelm us. Marcus Aurelius frequently turned to this perspective in his private writings, using the sheer scale of existence to ground himself in moments of stress or vanity. He wrote, "Keep always before your eyes how swiftly all things pass away, both the things themselves and their memory. What is the nature of the universe's existence? What is the nature of my own? What is the relation of one to the other? Remember how small a part of the boundless abyss of time has been allotted to you." He wasn't trying to make himself feel insignificant in a depressing way. Rather, he was seeking liberation, realizing that your moment on this ancient stage is brief, and that the stage itself is unimaginably vast, has a strangely calming effect. The urgency and self-importance we attach to our personal dramas begin to evaporate. That project you're stressing over, it will be forgotten. The embarrassing mistake you made, it will fade from memory. This isn't a call to inaction, but a call to peace. It allows you to engage with your life fully, but without the crushing weight of believing that every single outcome is of eternal, earth-shattering importance. Let's make this practical. Think about a common source of modern anxiety, making a mistake at work. Perhaps you sent an email with an error in it, or you miscalculated a number in a report. The reactive response is to feel a knot in your stomach, to imagine your boss's disappointment, to worry about your professional reputation, to essentially live in a state of dread until the perceived crisis passes. Now, apply the view from above. Fast forward 1 year from now. Will anyone remember this specific email? Will it have altered the fundamental course of your career or your company? Probably not. Now zoom out further. In 5 years, this single event will be a completely forgotten blip. In 50 years, the company itself may not even exist. And in 500 years, the very ground your office building stands on will have likely changed beyond recognition. This isn't meant to trivialize your professional efforts, but to put a single error into its proper, microscopic perspective. This shift doesn't encourage sloppiness, it encourages calm. It allows you to correct the mistake efficiently, learn from it, and move on without the paralyzing emotional baggage. You stop reacting to the mistake as a catastrophe and start responding to it as a minor, correctable event in a long and meaningful life. So I invite you to try this right now. Bring to the forefront of your mind a current worry, something that's been occupying your thoughts and perhaps stirring up anxiety. It could be a financial concern, a conflict with someone, or a fear about an upcoming event. Now close your eyes for just a few seconds and perform this mental exercise. First, visualize the issue from next month's perspective. How will it look then? Next, see it from the view of you 1 year from now. And finally, if you can, try to see it from the end of your life, looking back. What essential truth about this situation becomes clear from that final, broadest point of view? This practice doesn't make the challenge disappear, but it almost always reveals what is truly important, your character, your integrity, your peace of mind, and separates it from what is merely temporary noise. We all die. How does that simple, unavoidable fact change how you choose to live today? This is the heart of Memento Mori, the Stoic practice of remembering your own mortality. Far from being a morbid or depressing fixation, This reflection was used by the Stoics as the ultimate tool for creating urgency, clarity, and perspective. It is a powerful antidote to reactive drama because it instantly separates what is trivial from what is truly essential. When you consciously hold the knowledge that your time is limited and finite, you stop wasting precious emotional energy on things that simply do not matter in the grand scheme of your life. You begin to respond to challenges with a focus on meaning and virtue, rather than reacting to irritations with petty anger or frustration. Seneca, in his profound letters, continually returned to this theme, urging us to see death not as a distant threat but as a wise advisor for daily living. He wrote, "Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day. The one who puts the finishing touches on their life each day is never short of time." This is the key insight. The point of remembering death is not to make you fearful, but to make you free. It frees you from the illusion that you have an endless supply of tomorrows to finally be the person you want to be, to mend that relationship, to start that meaningful project, or to simply be present with the people you love. By living each day with the awareness that it could be your last, you are not living in panic, you are living with purpose. You begin to measure your actions against a much more significant ruler, not, "Will this upset me today?" but, "Will this matter on my last day?" Consider the classic modern frustration of being stuck in terrible traffic. The reactive response is all too familiar. Gripping the steering wheel, muttering curses at other drivers, feeling your blood pressure rise as you watch the minutes tick past. You react as if this delay is a personal offense, a massive problem ruining your entire day. Now apply the lens of Memento Mori. What if today was the last day you had? Is this traffic jam really how you would want to spend a portion of your final hours seething with impotent rage? Or would you perhaps use that time differently? Maybe you'd call a family member just to tell them you love them. Maybe you'd listen to a piece of beautiful music you've been saving for later. Perhaps you'd simply use the forced pause to reflect on the good things in your life, fostering a sense of gratitude instead of resentment. The traffic hasn't changed, but your relationship to the time you're losing has. You shift from reacting to the delay to responding to the gift of a moment you almost didn't have. So I want you to sit with this question for a moment. If you carried the conscious awareness of life's brevity with you every single day, not as a fearful shadow but as a clarifying light, what is one thing you would do differently? Would you finally let go of that long-held grudge that only hurts you? Would you spend less time scrolling through social media and more time looking into the eyes of the people right in front of you? Would you have the courage to start that project you've been dreaming about, even if you're afraid of failing? The practice of Memento Mori is the ultimate prioritization tool. It doesn't ask you to ignore life's small annoyances, but it ensures they don't command more of your attention than they deserve. By remembering the end, you are empowered to make a much better beginning and a far more meaningful middle to every single day you are given. There is a common and understandable misconception about Stoicism that we need to clear up right away. The popular image of a Stoic is often someone who is cold, unfeeling, and completely detached from the world, a sort of emotional robot. But this couldn't be further from the truth. The Stoics weren't trying to eliminate their humanity, they were striving to master it. They weren't emotionless, they were learning to master their emotions so that their feelings would serve their principles, not overthrow them. This profound distinction is at the heart of the Stoic concept of apatheia, a word that sounds like our modern apathy, but means something entirely different and far more powerful. Apatheia is not a numb indifference to life. It is a state of calm clarity, a freedom from what the Stoics called the passions, those overwhelming, irrational, and destructive emotional storms that hijack our judgment and lead us to act in ways we almost always regret. Epictetus provides the essential guidance for achieving this state of tranquility. He taught that the key is not to suppress what we feel, but to govern our desires and aversions, what we are drawn toward and what we desperately try to avoid. He said, freedom is secured not by the fulfilling of one's desires, but by the removal of desire. At first glance, that might sound like he's advising us to want nothing, to become passive spectators in our own lives. But look closer, he's talking about the removal of irrational desire, the kind that is rooted in the mistaken belief that our happiness and peace of mind depend on acquiring external things or on life unfolding exactly as we demand it to. True freedom, and the calm that comes with it, is found when we stop being puppets jerked around by every passing craving and every sudden fear. Apatheia is the inner stability that comes from placing your sense of worth and well-being on something unshakable, your own character and virtuous choices, rather than on the unpredictable chaos of the outside world. Let's make this concrete with an emotion we all know well: anger. Imagine you're driving and another car suddenly cuts you off, forcing you to slam on your brakes. The raw, initial feeling that surges through you, the adrenaline, the shock, the sense of being wronged, that is a natural, healthy feeling. It's a signal. The Stoics wouldn't tell you to not feel that signal. The practice of apatheia begins with what you do next. The passionate, destructive reaction would be to let that signal become a storm. You lay on the horn, you shout insults the other driver can't even hear, you tailgate them aggressively, your heart racing, your entire mood poisoned for the next hour. You have been conquered by the passion of anger. You have handed over control of your actions to a stranger's poor driving. Now consider the response guided by apatheia. You feel that same initial jolt of surprise and alarm. You acknowledge it, but then you invoke your training. You take a breath. You recognize that this event is outside your control. You cannot uncut off the car. You examine the judgment your mind is offering you. This person wronged me and deserves my rage. You choose to withhold your assent from that judgment. Instead, you might reassess. This person is likely in a hurry, perhaps distracted by an emergency, or simply made a mistake, as I myself have done countless times. From this place of calm clarity, you can then choose a reasoned action. You might simply slow down to create a safer following distance, ensuring your own safety and that of others. You feel the emotion, but it doesn't rule you. It informs you without overwhelming you. You respond with a clear mind rather than reacting with a flooded one. So let's bring this powerful practice into your own life. I want you to take a moment and identify one specific emotion that you often feel has a destructive hold over you. It might be anxiety that spirals into paralysis, jealousy that poisons your relationships, frustration that leads to sharp words, or even an overwhelming desire for something that leaves you feeling perpetually dissatisfied. Just name it. Now, for the next week, make it your personal practice to apply the principle of apatheia to this single emotion. When you feel its first stir, pause. Acknowledge the feeling without immediately believing its most dramatic story. Ask yourself, is this a healthy signal, or is it beginning to become a destructive passion? What would a calm, clear response look like right now, rather than a heated reaction? This is how we build emotional immunity, not by fighting our feelings, but by befriending them with understanding, and then choosing to act from a place of unwavering inner principle. What if every single one of your reactions, especially in those heated, challenging moments, was a direct reflection of your deepest values, not a passive surrender to circumstance, not a defensive lashing out, but a conscious choice aligned with who you most want to be in the world? This is where Stoic non-reactivity finds its ultimate anchor and its highest purpose, not in mere emotional suppression, but in the active, daily pursuit of moral excellence in the cultivation of virtue. The Stoics identified 4 cardinal virtues as the pillars of a good life: wisdom to navigate situations with clarity, courage to face difficulty without flinching, justice to treat others with fairness, and temperance to exercise self-control and moderation. They argued that true emotional stability isn't a slick psychological trick. It's the natural byproduct of a life lived in accordance with these principles. When your internal compass is firmly set to virtue, external events simply lose their power to knock you permanently off course. Marcus Aurelius, in his private meditations, continually returned to this idea as the non-negotiable foundation of everything. He wrote, "The true good is a good will. The only thing that is good is virtue, and the only thing that is bad is vice, which is connected with moral weakness." For a Roman emperor facing constant political intrigue, military threats, and personal loss, this was his rock. He wasn't seeking a life free from trouble. He was seeking a way to meet trouble with a character that remained intact and honorable. His tranquility didn't come from avoiding conflict, but from knowing that no matter what happened, he could always choose to act with wisdom, courage, justice, and self-control. This transforms non-reactivity from a defensive strategy into a profoundly positive and proactive way of being. You're not just trying to not get angry, you're trying to actively embody patience and understanding. You're not just trying to avoid fear, you're striving to act with courage despite feeling afraid. The virtue becomes the goal, and the calm mind is the beautiful, natural reward. Imagine a practical scenario that tests this alignment. You've made a significant mistake at work, one that could potentially cause a problem for your team. The initial reactive impulse is often one of self-preservation. You might feel the urge to hide the error, to blame someone else, or to downplay its significance. This is the path of fear, and it's fueled by the judgment that your personal security is tied to never being seen as fallible. Now consider the virtuous response guided by the 4 pillars. Wisdom allows you to accurately assess the situation, recognizing the mistake, understanding its potential impact, and seeing the clearest path to a solution. Courage enables you to overcome the fear of reprimand or embarrassment and step forward to take responsibility. Justice demands that you treat your teammates and your company fairly by being honest and not letting them operate on faulty information. And temperance moderates your panic, preventing you from either exaggerating the error into a catastrophe or minimizing it into insignificance. Choosing honesty over a defensive lie isn't just about being a good person. It's the most rationally effective way to handle the situation, and it leaves your integrity, your inner citadel, completely unbreached. So I invite you to bring this lens to your own life for a moment. Think about a type of situation that typically triggers a reactive response in you, perhaps a disagreement with a partner, receiving critical feedback, or dealing with a demanding person. Now, rather than just focusing on not reacting, ask yourself a different set of questions guided by the 4 virtues. What would the wise perspective be here? What would courage look like in this interaction? How can I ensure my actions are just and fair to everyone involved? What does temperance ask of me in managing my own emotions? By shifting your focus from suppressing a reaction to actively expressing a virtue, you fundamentally change the game. You're no longer a passive recipient of life's events. You are an active agent, using every single moment, especially the difficult ones, as an opportunity to practice and strengthen your character. Think about losing something you take for granted, not in a fearful, anxious way, but as a deliberate mental exercise. Your morning coffee, the reliable roof over your head, the ability to see a loved one smile, or even something as simple as a functioning internet connection. This is the core of the Stoic practice known as negative visualization, or Premeditatio Malorum, applied not to future obstacles but to our present blessings. It is a powerful technique designed to do one thing: shatter our sense of entitlement and reawaken a profound, active appreciation for the life we are living right now. By consciously imagining the absence of the good things in our lives, we fundamentally rewire our relationship with them. We move from a state of passive expectation, where we feel we deserve these comforts and are therefore quick to anger when they falter, to a state of active gratitude, where we recognize them as the gifts they truly are. This shift is one of the most effective ways to inoculate ourselves against those sudden spikes of frustration and complaint that characterize so much of our reactive behavior. Seneca, who himself enjoyed immense wealth and status, was a staunch advocate for this practice. He understood that the greatest threat to our peace isn't the lack of possessions, but the attitude we hold toward them. He advised his friend Lucilius, "You should live as if you are going to lose everything, and remember that you will lose it someday. Enjoy the present and don't worry about the future. You cannot change it." And in another letter, he drives the point home: we should love all of our dear ones, but always with the thought that we have no promise that we may keep them forever. Nay, no promise even that we may keep them for long. This is not pessimism, it is the ultimate realism seasoned with profound wisdom. Seneca isn't telling us to live in a state of perpetual mourning for things we haven't lost. He is giving us a recipe for intense, vibrant joy. By holding our comforts and relationships with an open hand, acknowledging their temporary nature, we squeeze every last drop of sweetness out of them while we have them. The Stoic doesn't love their family less by considering their loss. They love them more deeply, more attentively, and with far greater presence. Let's take a modern example that is almost universally relatable. Imagine your internet connection suddenly becomes incredibly slow, or it cuts out entirely right in the middle of an important task or a relaxing movie. The common, entitlement-driven reaction is immediate frustration. We might curse the service provider, slam a hand on the desk, complain loudly to anyone nearby, and feel a genuine sense of injustice, as if the universe has personally wronged us. This emotional spike is a reactive complaint born from the unexamined belief that high-speed internet is a guaranteed right, a permanent fixture of our existence that should never fail. Now apply negative visualization. Before you even sit down at your computer, take just 3 seconds to mentally play with the idea of life without the internet altogether. Imagine a world without instant access to information, without video calls to distant family, without the ability to stream music or films. From that perspective, a slow connection transforms from a personal affront into a minor, temporary inconvenience. The frustration dissipates, replaced by a quiet appreciation for the incredible technological miracle you usually take for granted. You might even use the downtime to read a physical book or simply look out the window. The external event hasn't changed, but your internal, emotional reaction has been completely disarmed by a preemptive dose of gratitude. So I encourage you to try this practice today. Pick one ordinary comfort you interact with regularly without a second thought. It could be the comfortable bed you sleep in, the convenience of your morning shower, the taste of your favorite food, or the presence of a pet that greets you. For just a moment, close your eyes and mentally play out the scenario of it being gone. Imagine your home without that comfort, your routine without that pleasure. Don't dwell on it with sadness, simply observe the feeling of absence. Then, open your eyes and return to the present reality, where that thing is still here, still yours to enjoy. Notice how its value seems to have magnified, how your attention is drawn to its presence with a new sense of warmth and thankfulness. This simple act is a direct workout for your gratitude muscles, and like any workout, it makes them stronger over time. The more you practice, the less room there is in your mind for entitled reactivity, and the more space you create for a calm, appreciative, and truly joyful engagement with the world exactly as it is. How many conflicts in your own life can be traced back to a few careless words spoken in a moment of haste or heated emotion? A sarcastic comment that slipped out, a defensive retort during an argument, a piece of gossip shared without thinking. These verbal sparks can ignite fires that are incredibly difficult to extinguish. The Stoics understood this intimate connection between our unchecked speech and our inner turmoil, and they elevated the conscious management of words to the level of a disciplined art. They weren't advocating for perpetual silence or encouraging us to become withdrawn. Instead, they were teaching us to wield our speech with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel, using it only when it serves a beneficial purpose, to inform, to help, to heal, or to connect. Every other word, especially those born from reactive emotion, is not just unnecessary noise. It is a potential threat to our own tranquility and to our relationships with others. Seneca, in his profound letters, frequently returned to the immense power and danger inherent in our capacity for speech. He observed, "A word once uttered can never be recalled." Think about the finality and weight of that simple statement. Once a harsh or accusatory sentence leaves your lips, it enters the world permanently. You can apologize, you can explain, you can try to walk it back, but you can never truly unsay it. The other person has heard it, internalized it, and been changed by it. The Stoic practice of measured speech is therefore a direct extension of emotional regulation. It is the understanding that the impulse to speak, especially when we feel wronged or agitated, is often a passion in itself, a desire to vent, to justify, to win. By choosing silence in that crucial moment, we are not being passive. We are actively choosing peace over conflict, understanding over being understood, and inner stability over temporary emotional release. Consider a situation most of us have faced: receiving criticism, whether in a performance review at work or in a personal conversation. The initial, raw impulse is almost always defensive. The words form instantly in our mind, ready to launch a counter-argument, to explain away the feedback, to point out the other person's own faults. This is the reactive path, and it almost always leads to escalation. Now imagine applying the Stoic art of silence. When the criticism comes, you consciously choose to not respond immediately. You take a breath, you let the words hang in the air. This silence is not a sign of weakness or agreement. It is a space for gathering your thoughts, for separating the useful information from the emotional delivery, for allowing your initial defensiveness to subside so that your rational mind can take the lead. From that place of quiet composure, you can then respond not with a reactive counterattack, but with a measured question. Can you tell me more about that? Or, thank you for that feedback, I'd like to think about it. This single practice has the power to transform potential conflicts into opportunities for growth and understanding. I want you to take a brief journey into your own memory. Can you recall a specific instance where words escaped you in a moment of anger, frustration, or hurt pride, words that you deeply wish you could take back? Perhaps it was a sharp remark to a partner during an argument, an unprofessional comment to a colleague, or a dismissive statement to a friend. Replay that moment in your mind. Now reimagine it with the power of a deliberate pause. What if, in that heated moment, you had chosen silence instead of speech? What if you had given yourself just 10 seconds of quiet to let the emotional wave pass? How might the entire course of that interaction have changed? This act of reflection isn't about dwelling on past regrets. It's about training your mind for future moments. It makes you more aware of that critical gap between the impulse to speak and the action of speaking, and it empowers you to begin filling that gap with the profound, wise, and often healing power of silence. What would a perfectly rational person do in your current situation? This is the central question behind one of the most powerful, yet often misunderstood, Stoic concepts, the ideal of the sage. The Stoic sage is not a historical figure you can point to, nor is it an unattainable myth. Think of it instead as a North Star for your character, a guiding model of perfect wisdom, courage, and emotional equilibrium that you can use to navigate any storm. The ancient Stoics were realists. They knew that achieving the perfection of a sage was likely impossible for any human being, but that wasn't the point. The profound value of this ideal lies in the striving itself. By consistently asking, "What would the sage do?" you are not setting yourself up for failure. You are giving yourself a constant, reliable standard against which to measure your own reactions and choices. It is a tool for self-betterment, a mirror to hold up to your own conduct that reveals where you are acting from impulse and where you are acting from principle. Epictetus, who focused intensely on the practical application of philosophy, framed this as our life's work. He taught his students, "If you wish to make progress, you must be content to be thought foolish and stupid in external matters, to let others get the better of you in material things." In a word, you must surrender your desires to the universe's flow if you wish your will to be in harmony with nature. His instruction wasn't about becoming a pushover. It was about reorienting your entire sense of victory. For the sage, the only true failure is to act against your own rational and virtuous nature. Winning an argument, getting the better parking spot, or having the last word are not victories if they cost you your inner peace and integrity. The sage equanimity comes from this single-minded focus. Their only goal in any situation is to respond with wisdom and virtue. Everything else, the outcome, the opinions of others, the external rewards, is simply part of the indifferent material they work with. Let's paint a vivid picture of this ideal in a scenario we all know too well: road rage. The typical reactive response is a familiar script. Someone cuts you off. Instantaneously, a story unfolds in your mind. They disrespected me. This is an outrage. They must be taught a lesson. This story fuels a physiological reaction: adrenaline, tension, anger, which then leads to a series of actions: honking, yelling, aggressive driving, perhaps even a dangerous confrontation. The entire event ruins your mood for the next hour, and you arrive at your destination flustered and stressed, having handed complete control of your emotional state to a stranger's poor driving. Now let's direct the same scene with our inner sage as the protagonist. The same car cuts you off. The initial jolt of surprise is the same. The sage is not an unfeeling robot. But here is where the paths diverge completely. The sage immediately invokes the dichotomy of control. I cannot control that driver's actions. They are outside my sphere of command. They then examine the impression. This person did not cut me off to personally insult me. They are likely distracted, in a hurry, or simply unaware. Assigning malicious intent is an unnecessary and harmful judgment. From this calm assessment, the sage chooses a virtuous response. Their goal is not to win on the road, but to act with courage, prioritizing safety, wisdom assessing the real risk, and justice considering the well-being of all drivers. So their action is a calm, deliberate one. They might simply slow down to create a safer distance, take a deep breath to release the physical tension, and perhaps even wish the other driver well, recognizing that everyone has moments of error. The event is over in seconds, and the sage continues their journey with tranquility completely intact, their inner citadel unbreached. I want you to try this exercise right now. Cast your mind back to a recent event that triggered a strong reactive response in you. It doesn't have to be a major crisis. A minor irritation or a moment of anxiety will work perfectly. Now replay the event in your mind, but this time insert your inner sage as the main character. Watch the situation unfold again, but from this new perspective. How does the sage see the initial trigger? What judgment do they withhold? What virtuous action do they choose instead of your initial reaction? How do they protect their peace? This isn't an exercise in self-criticism. It's an exercise in aspirational imagination. By vividly envisioning this higher version of yourself navigating a familiar challenge, you are not just thinking about Stoicism, you are actively programming your mind for your next real-world test. You are building a neural pathway that makes the wise, calm response feel more familiar and accessible than the reactive one. Your diary can be your best teacher for emotional control, offering a private, judgment-free space to untangle the knots of your day and retrain your automatic responses. This practice of Stoic journaling is far more than just keeping a log of events. It is an active, disciplined form of self-dialogue, a nightly workshop where you forge a calmer, more resilient self. Think of it as a dedicated time to step into the role of both student and philosopher, examining your actions and impressions with the gentle but honest eyes of a mentor seeking only your growth. The goal is not to dwell on mistakes with self-recrimination, but to learn from them with clarity and compassion, systematically building the emotional immunity we've been exploring throughout this video. The most powerful historical example of this practice is the work we now know as Marcus Aurelius' Meditations. It is crucial to remember that he never intended for those words to be published. They were his private journal, written mostly during military campaigns on the harsh frontiers of the empire. He wasn't writing to impress an audience, he was writing to remind himself of his principles, to counsel himself in moments of doubt, and to realign his thoughts with Stoic virtue. In one entry, he instructs himself, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." This wasn't pessimism, it was preparation. He was using his journal to rehearse his philosophy, to preemptively strengthen his mind against the reactive judgments he knew he would face. His journals were his personal gymnasium for the mind, where he built the mental muscles needed to carry the immense weight of leading an empire without losing his inner balance. Let's make this incredibly practical. Imagine your own reactive moment from today. Perhaps a colleague took credit for your idea in a meeting, and you felt a hot surge of anger but said nothing, silently seething for the rest of the afternoon. That evening, you sit down with your journal. Instead of just venting, "I'm so angry at Sarah for stealing my idea," you engage in a structured Stoic dialogue with yourself. You might break it down into a few key questions, much like the ancient philosophers did. First, you describe the event objectively. In the 3 p.m. meeting, Sarah presented the project concept I discussed with her yesterday as her own. Next, you note your initial impression and reaction. "My immediate thought was, that's mine. She betrayed me. I felt anger and humiliation. I reacted with silence and withdrawal." Now, here is the most crucial step. You apply your Stoic tools. You examine the judgments you assented to. Did I judge this event as a personal catastrophe? Did I believe my worth is determined by who gets credit? You practice the dichotomy of control. I cannot control Sarah's actions. I can control preparing my own contributions more formally and choosing to speak up next time. Finally, you plan a Stoic alternative for the future. Next time, I can respond with courage and justice by calmly stating, "I'm glad you expanded on that concept we brainstormed yesterday. I'd like to add a few more details to the framework." This entire process transforms a passive, frustrating experience into an active lesson in virtue. I want to extend a simple but powerful challenge to you. For the next 7 nights, dedicate just 5 to 10 minutes before you go to sleep to this practice of Stoic self-reflection. You don't need a fancy leather-bound book. Any notebook or even a notes app on your phone will work perfectly. The structure is what matters. Ask yourself 3 gentle but probing questions each night. First, where did I let an external event control my internal state today? Second, when did I practice a Stoic principle well, even in a small way? And third, what is one thing I can do tomorrow to better align my actions with wisdom and virtue? This is not an exercise in keeping a ledger of faults. It is an exercise in gentle, consistent course correction. Over the course of a single week, you will begin to notice patterns in your reactions. You will become more aware of the space between stimulus and response, and you will start to consciously design your future actions rather than simply repeating past reactions. Your journal becomes the quiet, faithful friend that helps you build the invisible code of non-reactivity, one thoughtful evening at a time. What if you saw yourself not as a solitary individual navigating a hostile world, but as an integral and inseparable part of a vast, interconnected whole? This shift in perspective is the heart of the Stoic concept of sympatheia, the profound understanding that the entire universe is a single, living, breathing organism, and that each of us is a tiny but essential cell within that greater body. This isn't merely a poetic metaphor. For the Stoics, it was a fundamental principle of physics and ethics. When we truly internalize this idea, it radically transforms how we relate to others and to the events of our lives. The perceived slights, the irritations, the conflicts that once felt like personal attacks suddenly lose their sharp edge. They are no longer battles between me and them, but rather seen as internal friction within a single system, inviting not retaliation but understanding and a desire for harmonious function. Marcus Aurelius, often staring up at the stars from his military tent, found immense solace and perspective in this cosmic viewpoint. He wrote in his Meditations, "Always think of the universe as one living organism with a single substance and a single soul. How all things are directed toward one end, and how they all cooperate to cause the being and the harmony of the whole." He is urging us to zoom out from our narrow, ego-centric field of vision. From this elevated vantage point, the person who cuts you off in traffic or the colleague who dismisses your idea is not an alien enemy. They are another expression of the same universal nature that you are, subject to the same flaws, fears, and misunderstandings. Their error is not a targeted assault on your being. It is a manifestation of their own ignorance or pain, occurring within the same shared system that you inhabit. This realization doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it completely reframes it, draining it of its personal venom and allowing you to respond from a place of calm correction rather than reactive defense. Consider a practical, everyday application of this principle. You are in a heated discussion with a family member over a recurring issue, perhaps how to manage finances or how to raise the children. The reactive, ego-driven pattern is to see this as a battle of wills. You dig in, you become invested in winning the argument, in proving your point. You take their opposition as a personal rejection of your intelligence or your values. Now apply the lens of sympatheia. See the two of you not as adversaries, but as two parts of the same family unit, which is itself a part of the larger human community. You both ultimately want the same thing: security, happiness, and well-being for your family. The conflict arises not from malice, but from different perspectives on how to achieve that shared goal. From this connected viewpoint, your aim shifts from defeating the other person to understanding them. You might ask, what part of our shared goal are you seeing that I am missing? This simple reorientation from opposition to collaboration within a whole can dissolve defensiveness and open the door to genuine compromise and creative solutions. You stop reacting to the person as a separate threat and start responding to the situation as a shared challenge for your interconnected partnership. So I invite you to bring this expansive idea into your own life. Think of a current conflict or a lingering resentment you're holding onto. It could be with a coworker, a friend, or even a stranger you've built a story around. Now make a conscious effort to see that person not as a separate entity acting upon you, but as a fellow human being, deeply interconnected with you through the simple fact of shared existence. They, like you, are doing what they believe is right based on their own experiences and limited knowledge. They, like you, are prone to error and fear. How does this perspective of fundamental connectedness soften your view of the conflict? Does it make space for patience where there was once only impatience? Does it allow for forgiveness where there was once only blame? By practicing this shift, you are not just adopting a philosophy, you are actively participating in the harmony of the whole, starting with your own peace of mind. Stoics actively sought out discomfort to become immune to the fear of losing their comfort. This might sound counterintuitive in a world constantly selling us on the promise of an easier, more convenient life, but the Stoic approach was one of profound psychological foresight. They understood that our deep attachment to ease and predictability is a primary source of our emotional fragility. When we become accustomed to a certain level of comfort, we unconsciously begin to expect it, and that expectation becomes a silent demand we place on the universe. The slightest disruption, a delayed train, a power outage, a minor inconvenience, then feels like a personal violation, triggering frustration and anxiety. By voluntarily stepping into mild hardship, we are not punishing ourselves. We are engaging in a form of emotional vaccination. We are exposing ourselves to a controlled dose of adversity to build up our internal antibodies against life's inevitable and unpredictable hardships. The Roman Stoic Musonius Rufus, a teacher of Epictetus, was a powerful advocate for this training. He argued that luxury and excessive ease were enfeebling to both the body and the mind, making a person soft and unable to endure difficulty. He taught, how can a person become hardy if he has not been tested by hardship? How can he learn self-control if he has faced no pleasures to resist? His point was that virtue is not built in a vacuum. Courage is not developed when everything is safe, and temperance is not learned when there is nothing tempting to refuse. The practice of voluntary discomfort is the gymnasium where we strengthen these muscles. It's the conscious decision to say no to a minor pleasure or yes to a manageable challenge, not because we have to, but precisely because we don't have to. This act of choice is what transforms the experience from mere suffering into empowering training. Consider the modern equivalent of this ancient practice, the decision to take a cold shower. When you first turn that dial to cold, everything in your body screams in protest. Your breath catches, your heart races, and your mind instantly generates a dozen compelling reasons why you should immediately step back into the warm, comfortable stream. This moment is a microcosm of every difficult challenge you will ever face. The impulse to react, to flee the discomfort, is powerful and immediate. But if you stay, if you breathe through the initial shock and choose to remain under the cold water for just 30 seconds longer, something remarkable happens. You are not just getting clean, you are practicing. You are practicing the act of feeling intense discomfort without being controlled by it. You are proving to yourself in a small but tangible way that you can handle more than you think. You are building a reference point in your memory for the next time life throws an unexpected cold splash of adversity your way. You can recall that you have faced discomfort before by choice and emerged perfectly fine, even strengthened. This training extends far beyond the bathroom. It could be choosing to walk instead of drive for a short trip, even when the weather isn't perfect. It could be skipping a second helping of dessert you genuinely want, not for dieting purposes, but for the practice of exercising your no muscle. It could be leaving your phone at home during a walk to practice being alone with your thoughts without digital distraction. The specific act matters less than the intentionality behind it. You are deliberately creating a small gap between a desire for comfort and its immediate gratification, and in that gap you forge resilience. So here is a simple invitation. Sometime today, just once, introduce one small, voluntary discomfort into your routine. It doesn't need to be dramatic or extreme. Perhaps drink your coffee black instead of with sugar. Take the stairs instead of the elevator, or simply sit in silence for 5 minutes without any entertainment or distraction. As you do it, pay attention to the initial urge to avoid it. Observe the stories your mind creates to justify quitting, and then gently choose to continue. You are not just doing a difficult thing, you are engaging in an ancient Stoic ritual of self-empowerment, building your tolerance for life's larger storms one small, voluntary challenge at a time. How many of your daily upsets and frustrations can be traced back to a single, simple source? The gnawing desire for something you currently do not have. That promotion that went to someone else, the newer car your neighbor just bought, the perfect relationship that seems to elude you, or even just the craving for a quiet evening that your noisy housemates are interrupting. This constant, often unconscious, reaching for what is just beyond our grasp is a primary engine of our emotional reactivity. It sets us up for a cycle of hope, anticipation, and all too often disappointment and resentment when reality fails to match our internal demand. The Stoics identified this as a core human dilemma, and they offered a powerful corrective known as the discipline of desire. This is not about crushing your ambitions or learning to want nothing. It is the far more nuanced art of learning to want wisely. It is about bringing our desires into alignment with nature and reason, so that what we seek is not only attainable but truly conducive to a life of sustained contentment and peace. The foundational insight for this practice comes from Epictetus, who cut straight to the heart of our suffering. He stated, "We suffer not from the events in our lives, but from our judgments about them, and we are disturbed not by things, but by the views which we take of them." When we apply this to desire, the truth becomes brilliantly clear. The suffering we feel from not getting a promotion is not caused by the promotion itself, but by our judgment that we are entitled to it, that we need it for our happiness, and that our worth is diminished without it. Epictetus is urging us to conduct a simple but profound audit of our wants. He asks us to hold each desire up to the light of reason and ask one crucial question: is this within my control? Desiring things that are not truly up to us, like a specific job title, the approval of others, or a certain level of wealth, is like planting seeds in another person's garden and then being devastated when they don't grow. We have invested our emotional well-being in soil we cannot tend. The discipline of desire is the process of uprooting those seeds and replanting them firmly in the only garden we can ever truly cultivate: our own character, our own efforts, and our own virtuous intentions. Let's make this distinction vivid with a practical scenario. Imagine two people working toward a promotion at their company. The first person is entirely focused on the outcome. They crave the title, the salary increase, and the recognition. They tie their entire sense of self-worth and future happiness to securing this one specific role. Every day they are anxious, reading into every interaction with their boss, comparing themselves to their colleagues, and feeling a spike of frustration with every minor setback. When the promotion is finally announced and it goes to someone else, their world feels like it has collapsed. They are not just disappointed, they are deeply wounded, reactive, and likely to lash out or withdraw. Their desire, fixed on an external outcome entirely outside their final control, has led directly to their suffering. Now, consider the second person who practices the Stoic discipline of desire. They also want the promotion, but they have wisely aligned their primary desire with what is within their control. Their true goal is not the job title itself, but to perform their work with excellence, integrity, and focused effort. They desire to be a valuable team member, to contribute meaningfully, and to act with virtue in all their professional interactions. The promotion is a preferred outcome, something they would welcome, but it is not the source of their contentment. Their happiness is derived from the quality of their work each day, which is something they can always control. If they get the promotion, they are grateful. If they don't, they are still content, knowing they acted with excellence and that their worth was never dependent on the outcome. They may feel a twinge of natural disappointment, but it does not spiral into reactive anger or despair. Their well-being remains intact because it was never mortgaged to an external result in the first place. This week, I invite you to bring this transformative lens to your own life. Take a few quiet moments to identify one specific desire that has been a consistent source of stress or reactivity for you. It might be the desire for a different living situation, for a conflict to be resolved, or for a particular person to change their behavior. Now, gently hold that desire and subject it to the Stoic audit. Ask yourself honestly, how much of what I want is truly within my direct, unilateral control? If the answer is very little, then see if you can gently shift the focus of your desire. Instead of craving the specific outcome, can you desire to act with courage, patience, and wisdom within the situation as it is? Can you want to do your best to maintain your own integrity and to accept whatever results may come with equanimity? This subtle but powerful realignment is the essence of the discipline of desire. It is the practice of placing your happiness in the one thing no external event can ever take from you: your capacity to choose your response with virtue and reason. Between event and reaction, there is a space, claim it. This tiny, often invisible gap is where your true power lies, and it is the very essence of the Stoic pause. In that fleeting moment between what happens to you and what you do about it, exists the opportunity to choose a response aligned with your deepest values instead of being hijacked by a surge of raw emotion. This practice isn't about becoming slow or hesitant. It's about inserting a moment of sovereignty into your own mind, transforming you from a passive reactor into an active, intentional actor in your own life. The Stoics understood that this space is the birthplace of character, the critical point where philosophy moves from theory into life-altering practice. Seneca, in his letters, offered timeless advice on the immense value of this deliberate delay. He wrote, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay. Beg anger to grant you this at the first, not in order that it may pardon the offense, but that it may form a right judgment about it." His insight is profound. He isn't asking you to suppress the initial feeling. He is urging you to simply buy yourself time. That time is the difference between a regret-filled outburst and a measured, powerful response. By pausing, you are not giving in or showing weakness. You are engaging the most sophisticated tool at your disposal, your capacity for reason. You are allowing the initial heat of the moment impression to cool just enough for your wiser judgment to examine it and decide its worth. So how do we practically claim this space when our nervous system is screaming for an immediate reaction? The techniques are beautifully simple, yet their effects are profound. One of the most accessible is the breath. When you feel that familiar jolt of anger, frustration, or anxiety, your first conscious act is to take one single, deep breath. You don't need to meditate for an hour, you just need to focus on the full inhalation and exhalation of one breath. This simple physiological act does two things instantly. It oxygenates your brain, helping to clear the fog of emotion, and it physically creates a 1 to 2 second buffer, forcibly inserting that crucial space into the chain of events. Another powerful technique is to have a pre-prepared Stoic maxim ready to recite internally. It could be as simple as whispering to yourself, "This is outside my control," or "Virtue is the sole good." This isn't a magical incantation, it's a cognitive anchor. It immediately redirects your mind from the chaotic external event to your internal, stable principles, pulling you back to your philosophical center. Imagine a common domestic argument beginning to escalate. One partner makes a critical comment about the other's spending habits. The immediate, reactive impulse is to defend, to counterattack, to list all the ways the other person is also imperfect. This is the well-worn path that leads to a full-blown fight, with harsh words spoken that can't be taken back. Now replay that scene with the Stoic pause in effect. The critical comment lands. Instead of firing back instantly, the recipient feels the sting, recognizes the rising heat of defensiveness, and consciously chooses to take that one deep breath. In the space of that breath, they might silently recite their maxim, "Choose understanding over winning." This pause is not a passive surrender, it is an active gathering of resources. From that comma center, they can now choose a response that de-escalates and seeks clarity. "It sounds like you're worried about our budget. Can we sit down and look at the numbers together so we're both comfortable?" The entire trajectory of the evening shifts from conflict to collaboration, all because of a 2-second pause. This week, I want to invite you to become an architect of your own pauses. Your practice is this: in the very next moment you feel triggered, whether by a frustrating email, a demanding child, or the slow-moving line at the grocery store, your only goal is to institute a one-breath pause. Don't worry about crafting the perfect Stoic response afterward. That will come with time. Your sole objective is to master the art of the pause itself. Feel the impulse to react, and then, just for a moment, override it with a conscious breath. Each time you succeed, you are not just avoiding a minor regret. You are physically rewiring a neural pathway, strengthening your capacity for choice, and building your emotional immunity from the inside out. What if the source of your emotional turmoil wasn't the event itself, but the story you instantly told yourself about it? This is perhaps the most transformative insight Stoicism offers, the understanding that our emotions don't spring directly from what happens to us, but from the silent, rapid-fire judgments we attach to those events. It's not the criticism that wounds you, it's your immediate interpretation that the criticism is a personal attack. It's not the rain that ruins your picnic, it's your judgment that the day is now a failure. The Stoics meticulously traced this chain reaction back to its origin, discovering that if we can master the art of examining our judgments, we can effectively disarm our most destructive emotional responses before they ever gain momentum. Epictetus, with his characteristic clarity, laid out this foundational principle nearly 2,000 years ago. He wrote, "People are not disturbed by things, but by the views which they take of them." Let's sit with that for a moment. The disturbance, the anxiety, the anger, it doesn't live in the external thing. It lives in the interpretation, the view, the judgment you form in a split second and then accept as absolute truth. This means that between you and the world stands your power of judgment, and that space is where your freedom resides. An event is just raw data. It is your judgment that assigns it meaning, value, and emotional charge. The practice, then, is to become a vigilant gatekeeper of your own mind, to learn to catch those automatic judgments as they arise and hold them up for questioning before you allow them to dictate your state of being. Consider a practical example that unfolds in workplaces and homes every single day. You send a carefully crafted email to a colleague proposing a new idea. Hours pass and you receive a brief two-line reply that simply says, "I don't think this is the right approach. Let's discuss later." The event is neutral, a string of words on a screen. But the automatic judgment that flashes through your mind is anything but neutral. It might be, "They hate my idea, they think I'm incompetent, they're dismissing me without a thought. This is a rejection of my creativity and hard work." This judgment feels true, and so the emotional consequences follow instantly. A sinking feeling in your stomach, a wave of defensiveness, perhaps even a simmering resentment toward your colleague. You have been disturbed not by their email but by your interpretation of it. Now let's apply the Stoic tool of examination. You feel the emotional sting, and instead of spiraling with it, you pause. You identify the judgment. "I have decided their email means I am incompetent and dismissed." You then challenge it. You ask yourself, is this the only possible interpretation? Could there be another, more generous or neutral meaning? Perhaps your colleague is incredibly busy, and their brevity is a sign of efficiency, not dismissal. Maybe they genuinely want to discuss it later to give it the full attention it deserves. It's possible they have a different perspective that could actually improve the idea. By consciously rejudging the event, you can choose a new meaning. This is not an attack. This is a request for more dialogue. This is feedback, not a final verdict. This cognitive shift doesn't just change your feelings, it changes your entire response. Instead of firing back a defensive email or sulking, you might reply, "Thanks for your note. I look forward to discussing it and hearing your thoughts." You have transformed a potential conflict into an opportunity for collaboration, all by mastering the root of your emotional response. I want you to try this powerful exercise of excavation right now. Cast your mind back to a recent moment that sparked a strong negative emotion in you: frustration, sadness, anxiety, or anger. It doesn't have to be a major event. A minor irritation will work perfectly. Now, gently replay the event itself, just the facts. Then, see if you can identify the precise judgment you made in that moment. What was the story you told yourself about what it meant? Did you decide a friend's cancelled plan meant they didn't value you? Did you interpret a slow driver as someone personally trying to inconvenience you? Once you have that judgment clearly in view, I want you to bravely challenge it. Ask yourself, is this story absolutely 100% true? What is another, more neutral or even positive way to view this same set of facts? This act of questioning is not self-deception. It is the practice of intellectual honesty. It is the recognition that your first interpretation is not a fact, but a hypothesis, and you have the power to choose a better, more empowering one. The hardest tests of our Stoic calm often come not from strangers or distant events, but from the people we share our lives with: our partners, family members, and closest friends. These are the relationships where our emotional triggers are most sensitive, where a single offhand comment can unravel hours of practiced tranquility, precisely because we care so deeply. In these intimate spaces, the Stoic art of non-reactivity faces its ultimate trial, moving from abstract philosophy to a daily, gritty practice of applying wisdom when it matters most. The goal here is not to become detached or cold toward those we love, but to cultivate a profound equanimity that allows us to engage with them more fully, more fairly, and with far less unnecessary conflict. It's about building relationships that are resilient to the inevitable friction of human interaction, grounded not in demanding that others change, but in mastering our own expectations and responses. Marcus Aurelius, who dealt with countless difficult people in the Roman Senate and his own household, offered timeless guidance for this very challenge. He wrote in his meditations, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they cannot tell good from evil." This might sound like a cynical way to start the day, but look deeper. He isn't advising us to condemn our loved ones. He is preparing us to meet them with realistic understanding rather than fragile idealism. His point is that people act according to their own nature and their own limited perceptions. When we internally demand that they act otherwise, that they be perpetually thoughtful, always grateful, or never difficult, we are setting ourselves up for constant disappointment and reactive anger. The Stoic shift is to accept people as they are, not as we wish they would be. This acceptance is not approval of bad behavior. It is the clear-eyed recognition of reality that allows us to respond effectively instead of reacting emotionally. Imagine a scenario so many of us know well. Your partner has a habit that genuinely frustrates you. Perhaps they consistently leave dishes by the sink instead of putting them in the dishwasher, or they have a tendency to be late when you're trying to get out the door together. The reactive pattern is familiar. You've asked them before, perhaps multiple times, and each new instance feels like a personal slight, a sign that they don't respect you or your time. The story builds in your mind. If they really cared, they would remember. They are doing this on purpose to annoy me. This judgment triggers a wave of irritation, and when you next see the dirty dish or find yourself waiting once again, you react. The tone of your voice is sharp, your words are accusatory, and what could have been a minor issue escalates into a tense exchange that leaves both of you feeling misunderstood and resentful. Now let's replay that scene with Stoic equanimity guiding your actions. The event is the same, the dish is by the sink. You feel the initial flicker of frustration, but you invoke your training. You pause and examine the judgment. You ask yourself, is it absolutely true that this action means they don't care? Could there be another explanation? Perhaps they were distracted, rushing to something else, or simply operating on autopilot, as all humans do. You accept the core Stoic truth: you cannot control their behavior, you can only control your response. From this calm center, you choose a different path. Instead of reacting with criticism, you might decide to say nothing at all this time, recognizing that picking a fight over a single dish is not a wise use of your energy or a loving act toward your relationship. Alternatively, if it's a recurring issue that needs addressing, you can choose a moment of calm to discuss it, using I statements focused on your feelings and a shared solution rather than blame. I feel stressed when the kitchen is cluttered, and it would mean a lot to me if we could both try to get dishes into the dishwasher. What do you think? This approach comes from a place of collaborative problem solving rather than reactive accusation. The habit might not change instantly, but your emotional suffering about it will diminish dramatically, and you create a space for change built on respect rather than resentment. Now, bring this principle into your own life with a specific relationship in mind. Think of one person you sometimes struggle with, someone whose patterns or personality can trigger a reactive response in you. It could be a parent who offers unsolicited advice, a friend who often cancels plans, or a colleague who dominates conversations. How might applying Stoic acceptance change your dynamic? What if you fully accepted that this is simply how they are, releasing the silent demand for them to be different? How would that internal shift alter your reactions? Would it create space for more patience, for humor, or for setting clearer boundaries without anger? The practice of equanimity in relationships is the ongoing work of fortifying your own inner citadel so that the actions of others, especially those you love, have less power to storm your gates. It is the commitment to meet their humanity with your own virtue, creating connections that are not only calmer but also deeper and more genuinely loving. Stoicism is ancient mindfulness, a disciplined practice of focusing on the now, without the filter of judgment or the distraction of past regrets and future anxieties. While the term mindfulness might feel modern, the core principle of anchoring one's attention in the present moment is a thread that runs directly through the heart of Stoic philosophy. It's the trained ability to fully inhabit your current activity, to engage with the task immediately before you, and to observe the flow of your own thoughts and sensations from a place of calm neutrality rather than being swept away by them. This isn't about emptying the mind, but about filling it with a purposeful and clear awareness of what is actually happening, right here and right now. Seneca, in his letters, continually emphasized this vital practice of concentration. He advised, "Whatever you do, pause and consider the outcome, then concentrate on the task itself, doing justice to the case in hand." His instruction is a powerful two-step process. First, the brief pause of consideration, which is the Stoic equivalent of creating that crucial space between stimulus and response. And second, the deep, unwavering concentration on the task itself. He is urging us to do justice to the present moment, to give it our full and undivided attention, as if nothing else in the world exists. This quality of focused engagement is what transforms any ordinary action into a meditation. Whether you are writing a report, washing a dish, or listening to a friend, the practice is the same. Your mind is fully and completely here, not lost in yesterday's conversation or tomorrow's meeting. Consider how this translates into a moment of modern stress. You're sitting at your desk and an email arrives bearing bad news. A project is delayed. A client is unhappy. The immediate, automatic reaction is for your mind to leap into the future, spinning out anxious stories about all the possible consequences, the difficult conversations to come, the potential for failure. This is rumination, and it creates a second layer of suffering on top of the initial event itself. Now, apply the Stoic meditative practice. Instead of following that thought train into a future that doesn't yet exist, you consciously anchor yourself in the present. You feel your feet flat on the floor. You notice the sensation of the chair beneath you. You take one conscious breath, simply observing the air moving in and out of your body without trying to change it. You are not denying the problem, you are simply refusing to be kidnapped by the panic about it. From this anchored, present-centered state, you can now look at the email again. Your view is clearer. You can assess the situation for what it actually is: a set of words on a screen presenting a problem to be solved, rather than reacting to the catastrophic story your mind had begun to write. You respond from a place of calm capability rather than reactive fear. This practice of present moment awareness is a muscle that grows stronger with consistent, gentle repetition. It doesn't require a silent retreat or hours of cross-legged meditation. It can be woven into the fabric of your everyday life. I encourage you to begin building this muscle with a simple, 1-minute daily ritual. Sometime today, perhaps when you first sit down at your computer or just before you begin your evening meal, I want you to set a timer for 60 seconds. For that single minute, your only task is to be fully present. Notice the physical sensations in your body. Listen to the sounds around you without labeling them as good or bad. Watch the flow of your thoughts as if they were leaves floating down a stream. You see them, you acknowledge them, but you don't jump in and try to stop them. If your mind wanders, as it inevitably will, gently guide it back to your breath or to a sensation in your hands. This 1 minute is a daily microdose of Stoic mindfulness, a small but powerful investment in training your attention to reside in the only time and place where you can ever truly live your life, the eternal now. Every barrier is a chance to practice your philosophy. to test the strength of your principles against the friction of the real world. The Stoics did not see hardship as a deviation from the path of a good life. They saw it as the very path itself. A life without obstacles would be like a sword never tested against a whetstone. It might look impressive hanging on the wall, but its edge would be dull and useless when truly needed. Difficulties are not interruptions to our peace. They are the raw material from which our peace is forged. This proactive reframing is not about putting a naive, positive spin on negative events. It is a much deeper, more robust form of alchemy, the conscious decision to use any and all circumstances, especially the unwelcome ones, as fuel for the development of wisdom, courage, justice, and self-control. An obstacle to a Stoic mind is not a stop sign. It is a training course designed specifically for your current level of spiritual and emotional fitness. Marcus Aurelius, facing countless political betrayals, physical ailments, and the immense pressures of leading an empire, continually returned to this transformative idea in his private writings. He offered what is perhaps the most famous Stoic maxim on this subject: the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This is a profound statement of practical physics applied to the human spirit. He is saying that the resistance we meet does not halt our progress. It defines the direction of our progress. A river does not complain when it encounters a rock. It simply finds a way around it, and in doing so, it carves out a canyon and creates a new, more powerful course. The obstacle is not separate from the journey. It is an essential part of it. The rock is not blocking the river's path. It is shaping the river's path. When we embrace this mindset, we stop seeing ourselves as victims of circumstance and start seeing ourselves as students of circumstance, always ready to learn the lesson it has come to teach us. Consider the story of a dedicated professional who suddenly and unexpectedly loses their job. The initial impact is undeniably brutal, a shock to one's identity, a threat to financial security, a profound sense of rejection and uncertainty. The reactive path is well trodden: despair, bitterness, frantic fear-based job applications, and a narrative of being wronged by the company or the market. This is a natural human response, but it is also a path that leads to prolonged suffering and poor decision-making. Now, watch how the Stoic reframe transforms this same event. After acknowledging the initial shock and fear, the individual pauses and applies their philosophy. They ask the pivotal question: if this is the obstacle, how can it advance my action? How can this become the way? This shift in perspective unlocks a completely different set of responses. The sudden freedom from a draining daily routine becomes an opportunity to reassess one's entire career path, to ask if the previous job was truly aligned with their values. The financial pressure becomes a motivator to develop frugality and resilience, virtues that had lain dormant. The rejection becomes a chance to practice humility and to build a wider, more authentic professional network based on mutual support rather than mere convenience. The obstacle of job loss, when met with Stoic courage, can become the very catalyst that forces a person onto a more authentic, fulfilling, and ultimately better path, one they might never have had the courage to choose for themselves. Now bring this lens of transformative possibility to your own life. I want you to bring to mind one specific obstacle you are currently facing. It doesn't have to be a monumental crisis. It can be a persistent frustration, a recurring source of stress, or a seemingly immovable problem. It could be a health concern, a difficult relationship dynamic, a financial constraint, or a creative block. Hold that obstacle in your mind clearly. Now, instead of focusing on how it is limiting you, I challenge you to ask a different set of questions, guided by the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius. How is this impediment secretly trying to advance my action? What virtue is it inviting me to practice? Is it patience, courage, creativity, or perhaps perseverance? If this obstacle were not a wall but a doorway, what new room might it be leading me into? The simple act of asking these questions begins to rewire your perception. You start to engage with the difficulty not as an enemy to be defeated, but as a teacher that has arrived with a specific, albeit challenging, lesson. This is the heart of turning obstacles into opportunities, the realization that the power was never in the external event, but in your internal, sovereign choice of how to meet it. Can you laugh at the sheer absurdity of life sometimes, not with a cynical sneer that says nothing matters, but with a light-hearted chuckle that recognizes the inherent comedy in our shared human experience? This ability to find genuine humor even in difficulty is not a departure from Stoic philosophy. It is one of its most sophisticated and humanizing tools. The Stoics understood that a well-timed laugh could be a powerful act of defiance against misfortune, a way to instantly reduce the emotional charge of a situation and reclaim a sense of perspective. It is the mental equivalent of letting the air out of an overinflated balloon, preventing the pressure from building to a point where it might pop in a destructive outburst of frustration or anger. Seneca, in his profound letters, frequently touched on this theme, advising against the weight of self-importance that makes us so vulnerable to offense. He wrote, "We should make light of all things and endure them with tolerance. It is more human to laugh at life than to lament it." Notice his careful phrasing. He does not say to ignore life's challenges or to mock them cruelly. He suggests we make light of them, which means to consciously reduce their perceived heaviness in our minds. This is not about trivializing real pain, but about refusing to add unnecessary dramatic weight to the inevitable irritations and setbacks that make up a human life. Laughter in this context becomes a form of endurance, a way to tolerate difficulty with grace and even a touch of joy. It is the recognition that while we cannot always control what happens to us, we can almost always control the spirit with which we meet it. History provides us with a wonderful, concrete example of this principle in action through the figure of Democritus, the laughing philosopher, who greatly influenced the Stoics. While not a Stoic himself, he embodied an attitude they deeply admired. Democritus was known to wander through the marketplace and various public gatherings, not with a frown of judgment but with a hearty laugh. When asked why he found the hustle and bustle of human life so amusing, he explained that he was laughing at the folly of humanity, our endless anxieties over trivialities, our pursuit of empty status symbols, our serious debates over meaningless things. He wasn't laughing at people from a place of superiority, but from a place of shared understanding. His laughter was a commentary on the universal human condition, a way to hold up a mirror to our collective absurdities without a trace of bitterness. The Stoics saw in this a profound wisdom. Humor can create a necessary distance between us and our problems, allowing us to see them for what they truly are, often small, temporary, and part of a much larger, often ridiculous human comedy. Now bring this ancient insight into your own modern life. Think of a minor annoyance you experienced just this week. Maybe you spilled coffee on your clean shirt right before an important meeting, or you spent 20 minutes searching for your phone only to find it in your own back pocket. In the moment, it likely felt intensely frustrating, a genuine inconvenience, but rewind the tape and view it from a slightly different angle, as if you were watching a scene in a sitcom. See the frantic search, the growing exasperation, the final, laughable realization of the phone's location. Can you allow a smile to form now? That simple shift, that choice to find the humor, is a practical application of Stoic lightness. It doesn't change the event, but it completely transforms your relationship to it, draining it of its power to ruin your mood, and instead turning it into a small, personal anecdote of human fallibility. So here is a challenge for you. Sometime in the next 24 hours, when you inevitably encounter a minor frustration, a slow-moving line, a misplaced set of keys, a technology glitch, I want you to try an experiment. The moment you feel that familiar surge of impatience or irritation, pause. Instead of leaning into the frustration, see if you can consciously take a step back and look for the hidden humor in the situation. Is there something faintly ridiculous about it? Can you imagine yourself describing this moment later to a friend and both of you having a laugh? This isn't about pretending the annoyance doesn't exist. It's about choosing a more resilient and ultimately more enjoyable way to move through it. By finding the comedy in life's tiny tragedies, you aren't being frivolous, you are practicing an advanced form of Stoic emotional alchemy, transforming leaden irritations into the gold of enduring perspective. Why rush when the world itself moves at its own deliberate, unhurried pace? The sun does not leap across the sky to suit our schedules. The seasons do not change because we grow weary of the cold or the heat. There is a profound, ancient rhythm to nature that operates entirely independently of our personal sense of urgency, and it is within this very rhythm that the Stoic virtue of patience finds its deepest roots. Patience for the Stoics is far more than simply waiting without complaining. It is an active form of trust, a conscious alignment with the natural order of the universe, and a humble acceptance that not everything responds to the force of our will. It is the understanding that some things, especially the most meaningful things like growth, healing, and understanding, require the one ingredient our modern world seems to have forgotten: time. Marcus Aurelius, in his private meditations, continually counseled himself toward this acceptance of nature's tempo. He wrote, "Nothing happens to anybody that he is not fitted by nature to bear." The same things happen to others, and they either don't notice or are unmoved or see them as an advantage. It's a shame when ignorance and conceit are stronger than wisdom. In this, he points to a core truth. Our impatience is not caused by the delay itself, but by our judgment of it, by our arrogant belief that our personal timeline should override the universal one. When we fight against the natural pace of events, we are like a swimmer fighting against the current, exhausting ourselves while making little progress. Patience is the moment we stop struggling, turn, and allow the current to carry us, trusting that it knows the way to the shore even when we cannot see it. Consider the stark contrast between two ways of experiencing a common modern delay: waiting in a long, slow-moving line at a store. The impatient response is a textbook case of reactive suffering. You shift your weight from foot to foot, you sigh loudly, you check your phone for the 10th time in a minute, you glare at the back of the person at the front of the line as if your frustration could somehow accelerate their transaction. Your entire body is tense, your mind is spinning with stories about wasted time and inefficient service, and you emerge from the experience 5 minutes later feeling genuinely drained and aggrieved, your peace sacrificed on the altar of a trivial inconvenience. Now witness the same scenario through the lens of Stoic patience. You arrive at the line and see its length. This is the event, the external circumstance outside your control. Your internal practice begins immediately. You accept the reality of the wait without resistance. You might use this unexpected gift of paused time, a rarity in our hectic lives, to practice mindfulness. You observe the details of your surroundings with curiosity. You feel the sensation of your breath. You use the moment to plan your evening or simply to rest your busy mind, allowing it to wander without agenda. Perhaps you even use it to practice the Stoic virtue of justice, offering a kind word or a smile to the tired cashier when you finally reach them, understanding that they too are part of the same unfolding process. You leave the store not drained, but perhaps even slightly refreshed, your tranquility not only intact but strengthened by the practice. The same amount of time passed in both scenarios, but your relationship to that time was utterly transformed by patience. This virtue asks us to look honestly at the rhythms of our own lives and identify where our resistance to nature's pace creates the most friction. Where does impatience most frequently hijack your peace? Is it the simmering frustration in traffic, where you mentally rage against every red light as a personal affront? Is it the anxious checking of your inbox after sending an important message, your need for an immediate reply overshadowing the other person's right to their own process? Or perhaps it is a deeper, more significant impatience, the frustration with your own progress in learning a new skill, building a business, or mending a relationship, forgetting that all living things grow from the inside out according to a timetable that cannot be rushed. Recognizing this specific battleground is the first step toward planting the flag of patience upon it, choosing to trust that things will unfold precisely when and how they are meant to. Before you give voice to that next complaint, take a brief inventory of what's actually going right in this very moment. This simple act of pausing to acknowledge your blessings is far more than a feel-good exercise. It is a profound Stoic discipline that actively rewires your perception from a focus on lack to an awareness of abundance. In a world constantly whispering about what we need to acquire, achieve, or change, gratitude is the quiet but powerful counter-message that pulls our attention back to the wealth we already possess. It is the ultimate antidote to the reactive dissatisfaction that flares up when life fails to meet our every expectation, training us to find contentment not in the endless pursuit of more, but in the deep appreciation of what is already here. The Stoic foundation for this practice is beautifully simple. Direct your thankfulness toward what is truly and reliably yours. We pour so much energy into longing for things outside our control, a different job, a different house, a different outcome, and in doing so, we blind ourselves to the good that is already within our command. Epictetus, with his characteristic focus on what is ours to govern, offered this clear guidance. He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has. This rejoicing is not passive, it is an active, daily discipline of the mind. It is the conscious decision to inventory your internal and external assets, your health, your reasoning mind, your capacity for effort, the simple comforts you enjoy, and to recognize that these are the true sources of a stable and resilient happiness. Gratitude, in the Stoic sense, is the practice of anchoring your sense of well-being in this solid ground of the present and the attainable, making you far less vulnerable to the storms of wanting what you do not have. Consider the classic contrast between two mindsets facing the same everyday event: a sudden, steady downpour that cancels your afternoon plans for a hike. The reactive, entitlement-driven response is immediate frustration. You might grumble about the ruined day, curse the weather, and spend the next hour indoors in a sour mood, mentally cataloging everything that's going wrong. This reaction stems from a story you've unconsciously accepted, that you are owed good weather, that your plans should proceed unimpeded, and that this rain is a personal inconvenience. Now apply the Stoic lens of gratitude. Instead of focusing on the cancelled hike, an external event outside your control, you shift your attention to what the rain itself represents. You can feel genuine thankfulness for the water that nourishes the earth, fills the reservoirs, and sustains all life. You can appreciate the cozy shelter of your home that keeps you dry and warm. You might even feel gratitude for the unexpected gift of a free afternoon, now suddenly available for that book you've been meaning to read or a quiet conversation with a family member. The external circumstance hasn't changed, but your internal world has been completely transformed by simply choosing to count a different set of blessings. This practice is a muscle that grows stronger with consistent use, and its effects compound over time. The more you train your mind to spot the good, the less power minor irritations have to derail your emotional equilibrium. You begin to see that for every single thing that goes wrong, there are a dozen things that are quietly, consistently going right. The functioning of your senses, the roof over your head, the presence of people who care about you, the very breath in your lungs. Gratitude doesn't ask you to ignore life's genuine difficulties. It simply ensures that you don't ignore life's genuine gifts in the process. It builds a foundational layer of contentment that makes you less reactive to the world's inevitable fluctuations. So let's make this tangible right now. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I want you to pause for just 30 seconds and bring to mind 3 specific things you are grateful for in this exact moment. They don't need to be grand or profound. Perhaps it's the warmth of the cup of tea in your hands, the fact that you had a nutritious meal today, the comfort of the chair you're sitting in, or the memory of a kind word someone shared with you recently. Hold each one in your mind not as a vague concept, but as a specific, felt experience. Just for these few moments, allow your awareness to rest entirely on these gifts. This is not about denying your challenges. It is about balancing your perspective, actively choosing to feed the wolf of contentment rather than the wolf of lack. This small daily ritual is a direct investment in your emotional immunity. A practical way to build a life that feels abundant not because you have everything, but because you appreciate what you have. Do your best, then release attachment to the outcome. This simple yet profound instruction lies at the heart of a practice that can liberate you from the emotional whiplash of life's inevitable ups and downs. So much of our daily anxiety, frustration, and disappointment doesn't come from our efforts themselves, but from the heavy weight of expectation we place upon the results of those efforts. We tie our sense of self-worth, our happiness, and our peace of mind to specific external markers: getting the job, winning the approval, achieving the goal. But the world is an unpredictable and often uncontrollable place, and when we chain our inner tranquility to these external outcomes, we hand over the keys to our emotional state to forces we can never fully command. The Stoic practice of focusing on effort alone is not about abandoning ambition or ceasing to care. It is about shifting the very source of your satisfaction from what you cannot control to what you can, your own virtuous action in the present moment. The foundational teaching for this comes directly from Epictetus, who drew a clear and liberating line in the sand. He wrote, "Some things are within our power, while others are not." Within our power are opinion, pursuit, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever are our own actions. Not within our power are our body, our property, our reputation, our status, and, in a word, whatever are not our own actions. This is the core of the entire practice. Your effort, your intention, your preparation, your focus, your integrity in the process, these are your own actions. They belong to you. The final result, however, the win or loss, the promotion or rejection, the praise or criticism, depends on a million other variables. The judge's mood, a competitor's skill, the state of the economy, plain old luck. These are not your own actions. They belong to the realm of the indifferent. When you pour your entire soul into the first category, your effort, and consciously release your grip on the second, the outcome, you are not giving up. You are growing up into a state of mature emotional resilience. You trade the roller coaster of hope and fear for the steady ground of principled action. Consider the mindset of a dedicated athlete training for the Olympics. If their entire focus, their entire sense of validation, is locked on winning a gold medal, they are setting themselves up for potential devastation. They cannot control the performance of their competitors on the day. They cannot control a sudden gust of wind, a quirky judging decision, or an unexpected illness. If they win, they are euphoric, but that high is temporary and dependent on an external validation that will eventually fade. If they lose, they are crushed, feeling that 4 years of effort were a waste. Now imagine the same athlete who has internalized the Stoic focus. Their goal is not the medal itself. Their goal is to execute their performance to the absolute best of their ability. Their satisfaction is derived from the quality of their training each day, from pushing their limits, from perfecting their technique, from the sheer love of their sport. When they step onto the field, their mind is not on the podium. It is on the next move, the next breath, the next moment of their performance. If they win, they can celebrate the outcome while knowing their true worth was already secured in their effort. If they lose, they can still hold their head high, proud of the performance they delivered, knowing that on that day, their best was simply not the best. The outcome does not define them, their character and effort do. This shift is the difference between being a prisoner of results and an architect of your own dignity. Now bring this practice into your own life. I want you to think of one specific goal or desired outcome you are currently holding onto very tightly. It might be a particular job you've applied for, a certain number on the scale, the hope that a specific person will change their behavior, or the success of a creative project you've launched. Feel the tension and anxiety that surrounds that attachment. Now, gently perform the Stoic audit. Separate the two categories with clarity. What aspects of this are truly within your control? Your preparation, your research, your consistent effort, your attitude, the quality of the work you produce, and what aspects are ultimately not within your control? The final decision of the hiring manager, the metabolic reactions of your body, the free will of another person, the taste of the public. Your work this week is to consciously pour all your energy and focus into that first category, your own actions. Do your work with excellence for its own sake, and then, as an act of will, practice mentally releasing the outcome. Visualize yourself placing it gently on a leaf and letting it float down the stream of fate, trusting that whatever happens, your piece was never in it to begin with. It was always and only in the integrity of your effort. What if each day included a small, intentional exercise designed to strengthen your emotional core and build resilience against life's inevitable pressures? This is the power of a daily Stoic ritual, a structured yet flexible practice that weaves together the principles we've explored into a single, cohesive routine. It's the final piece of the puzzle, the practical application that transforms Stoic philosophy from an interesting idea into a lived experience, creating what Seneca called a wall of protection around your mind through consistent daily effort. He wrote to his friend Lucilius, "Assure yourself that philosophy has nothing more to offer than the advice I give you now, to value each day as if it were a complete life. You must make this day, this very hour, your personal possession. This is the ultimate goal, to make your daily practice so ingrained that it becomes a part of you, building emotional immunity not through grand, occasional gestures, but through the quiet, cumulative power of small, repeated actions." A powerful daily ritual doesn't need to be complex or time-consuming. In fact, its simplicity is its greatest strength. Think of it as a 3-part anchor for your day, combining the practices of journaling, meditation, and reflection. In the morning, rather than immediately reaching for your phone and absorbing the world's chaos, you might dedicate just 10 minutes to setting your intentions. This could involve a brief meditation, focusing on your breath and visualizing the challenges you might face, not with anxiety, but with the calm readiness of Premeditatio Malorum. You could then open a journal and write down a single Stoic maxim to carry with you throughout the day, such as, "I control my choices, not outcomes," or "This too shall pass." This isn't about writing an essay, it's about planting a seed of wisdom that will subconsciously guide your reactions. As you move through your day, the ritual continues in the form of micro-practices, the application of the Stoic pause before responding to a frustrating email, the conscious effort to find a moment of amor fati when a meeting is cancelled, or the use of the view from above when you feel overwhelmed by a minor crisis. These are the moments where your morning preparation meets reality, where philosophy is tested and strengthened. Then, in the evening, the ritual concludes with a period of reflection. This is where the journal comes out again, not to dwell on faults, but to gently review the day with compassionate curiosity. You might ask yourself 3 simple questions. Where did I practice a Stoic principle well today? Where did I let an external event disturb my peace? What is one thing I learned that I can apply tomorrow? This nightly audit, as the Stoics called it, closes the loop, turning every single day into a personalized masterclass in emotional resilience. Imagine a sample morning designed with these principles in mind. You wake up and before checking any devices, you spend 2 minutes in silence, simply focusing on your breath and acknowledging the gift of a new day. You then read a short passage from a Stoic text. A single paragraph from Marcus Aurelius or Epictetus is enough to provide fuel for thought. Next, you write in your journal for 5 minutes, perhaps completing the sentence, "Today I will focus on controlling," and leaving space for what you will not try to control. You then visualize one potential challenge you might face, a difficult conversation, a tedious task, and mentally rehearse responding to it with virtue rather than emotion. The entire process takes less than 15 minutes, yet it arms you with a clarity and purpose that will influence every single hour that follows, making you the calm eye in the center of life's storm. Now I want to turn this over to you. The most effective ritual is not one you copy perfectly from someone else, but one you design for your own life, your own challenges, and your own schedule. Take a moment to consider what a sustainable Stoic practice could look like for you. Maybe it's a 5-minute journal session while your coffee brews, or a moment of mindfulness during your commute where you contemplate Memento Mori to prioritize your day. Perhaps it's a dedicated 10 minutes before bed to reflect and release the day's events. Choose just 1 or 2 elements from the vast toolkit of Stoicism that resonate most deeply with you right now, and commit to weaving them into the fabric of your tomorrow. This isn't about adding another item to your to-do list. It's about transforming your existing routines into opportunities for growth, building your invisible code of emotional immunity one deliberate, peaceful day at a time. We have journeyed together through the core practices of the Stoic art of non-reactivity, exploring the tools that build what we've called an emotional immunity. We began with the foundational dichotomy of control, learning to draw that vital line between what is ours to command and what is not, conserving our energy for where it truly makes a difference. We explored cognitive distancing, discovering how to observe our thoughts as passing clouds in the sky of the mind, rather than becoming fused with them. We delved into the discipline of assent, that powerful gatekeeping skill where we choose whether or not to accept the judgments our mind so quickly offers us. We prepared for adversity through Premeditatio Malorum, transforming potential future shocks into manageable events through the power of mental rehearsal. We practiced amor fati, learning to not just accept but to embrace whatever life brings, finding the opportunity hidden within every obstacle. We gained perspective with the view from above, shrinking our problems down to their true size against the vast backdrop of the cosmos. We remembered our mortality with Memento Mori, using the brevity of life as a lens to focus on what is truly essential and to release the petty. We clarified the true meaning of apatheia as calm clarity, not cold indifference, and we anchored our entire practice in the pursuit of virtue, ensuring our non-reactivity is an active expression of moral excellence, not passive withdrawal. We cultivated gratitude through negative visualization, and we practiced the art of wise silence. We used the ideal of the sage as a guiding star, and we turned to the page in our journals for nightly reflection. We recognized our interconnectedness with sympatheia, built resilience through voluntary discomfort, and aligned our desires with reason. Most importantly, we learned to claim that sacred space between stimulus and response with the Stoic pause, understanding that within that tiny gap lies our entire freedom. This invisible code is not a set of rules to be memorized and then mastered. It is a lifelong practice, a continuous and gentle returning to these principles again and again. It is the work of a lifetime, not the project of a week. There will be days you feel you have it all figured out, and there will be days you feel you have forgotten everything. This is not failure, this is the practice. The philosopher Epictetus, who has been our guide throughout, offered a perfect closing thought for this journey. He said, "Peace comes not from changing the circumstances of your life, but from realizing who you are at the deepest level and finding your peace there." This is the ultimate promise of Stoicism. It is an inward journey to that unshakable core within you, a place of quiet strength that no external event can ever reach, let alone destroy. You do not need to implement every single practice we discussed starting tomorrow. That would be overwhelming and contrary to the patient, deliberate nature of this philosophy. Instead, I encourage you to choose just one. Perhaps it is the nightly journaling, or the morning visualization, or simply the commitment to take one deep breath before you respond in your next difficult conversation. Start small, be consistent, and be endlessly patient and compassionate with yourself. Progress in philosophy is measured not in perfection, but in the gradual increase of moments of peace, the slow strengthening of your emotional immune system. If this exploration of Stoic wisdom has been valuable to you, consider subscribing to the channel. There is so much more to explore, from the lives of the great Stoics to deeper dives into specific texts and modern applications. This is not just a historical study, it is a living philosophy for a better life, and I would love to hear about your own experiences in the comments below. Which of these practices resonates most with you? What challenges are you facing as you try to implement them? Your journey is unique, and by sharing it, you contribute to the learning of this entire community. Thank you for your time and your attention. May you go forward with a little more peace, a little more clarity, and the unwavering knowledge that your tranquility has always been and will always be an insight.